Will you commit now not to send any further Russian troops into Ukrainian sovereign territory?
Look, did we say that we were planning to send our armed formations anywhere? We conducted war games in our territory. How can this not be clear? I'm saying it again because I want your audience to hear it. I want your listeners to hear it, both on the screens of their television sets and on the internet. We conducted military exercises in our territory. Imagine if we sent our troops into direct proximity to your borders. What would have been your response? We didn't do that. We did it in our territory. You conducted war games in Alaska. God bless you. But you had crossed an ocean, brought thousands of personnel and thousands of units of military equipment close to our borders, and yet you believe that we're acting aggressively, and somehow you're not. Just look at that. Pot calling the kettle black.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I don't think he really answers the question, but he does invoke this idea of tit for tat, which when people start taking up arms, tit for tat, you know, I do one thing, they do the other. You ever seen the Laurel and Hardy film, Tit for Tat? Very, very funny. This is not very, very funny. It's very, very funny when Laurel and Hardy do it. Very, very serious when armed forces start doing tit for tat. So I don't like that comes in at this point, where I just noticed when we were watching that replay, when he talks about territory, he shows disdain. So again, Chase, to your point that we saw it earlier on, disdain isn't just disdain for an individual. Disdain is a whole society. It's a whole group. Again, worrying when you start to talk about armed forces, because it's not going to war with an individual. You are going to war with that whole group. You don't have a problem with one person. You got a whole problem with a group of people. So this is setting up for what is to come later on. Now he mocks with this kind of tight protective gesture, I think, around the idea of America's Alaskan borders with Russia. It is mocking, it is flippant again, and disrespectful. And then we have this tilt of the head at the end and the kind of movement of the mouth at the end. Again, soft gestures that I certainly know Alan Pease was responsible for helping him with, to be just a little bit softer. But that really is a regulator at the end to go, you know what, job done. I've mocked you, job done, point scored on that one. Greg, what do you got on this?
I'll be pretty short on this one. This is how he lies. When you are taught to resist interrogation, you're taught not to outright lie because you'll get caught. I mean, we're good at catching lies. What we're not good at is dealing with the person who avoids answering the question. And that's what he does effectively. He does what I would call parallel conversation. So if you ask me a question about driving too fast, Scott.
Greg, do you drive too fast?
Have you seen my old truck, the one that I bought last year to drive down the farm? I'm going to bring up something that's related, so it sounds like we're talking about the same thing. Then I'm going to go down the thing, and then I'm going to tell you that Georgia's speed limits are unreasonable. And if they would just change them, I would never get another speeding ticket. He just did parallel conversation, which means he doesn't have to answer the question. Still sounds like he's in the ballpark, and he's talking. And I agree with you, that's mocking. I see disdain as well when he's talking about territory. And he has a logical argument. The logical argument is what makes him capable of redirecting the conversation. This is a beautiful job of redirecting and still not answering. Chase, what do you got?
If everything is true that he said here, which all those things are true, and if that were the whole picture, I would be in 100% agreement with Putin. He frames this like a master. And I think I'm going to go on a limb here. I think the interviewer is a good person. The interviewer is probably extremely sharp and intelligent, but it's absolutely no match for this level of training and this level of polish that this person has. Imagine going from like Jason Bourne to being in the White House. You'd outperform a lot of people. And I think that's what we're seeing here, the way he masterfully weaves this. Putin uses even deeper levels of his methods here. he gets us to agree with him that we're watching this on a screen and we're watching it on the internet. He automatically gets us to say, oh, wow, he's saying something that's happening to me right now. So I'm starting to buy into what's going on just with this stupid little comment. So I went back and watched several hours of past video today. I downloaded it, watched it on the airplane. And he is very consistent with these shoulder shrugs to get buy-in from the other person and the right for positive things, his left hand for negative or controversial things that he doesn't like or he views as negative. But he continues the method here. Take a look at the video when it comes back up. Fact, 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 imaginary scenario, and then using questions to drive your focus. And I guarantee you, even knowing this formula, it's going to work and it will drive where you're focused on. You could see it in the video coming up. Scott?
All right, I'm going to touch on a little bit of, I think we're all seeing the same stuff here pretty much. So I'll be just touching a different spot on what you guys have covered. At the very beginning, we see that quick little lip purse at the beginning. That indicates that he doesn't agree with this. He sees this as a problem. Then we see his eyes darting around. And when people's eyes dart around, they're processing a threat or negative information. When he lips his lips, he's preparing to speak at that point. There's really not much there. He's just prepping to speak. And he's pretty aggressive at this point. He gets his head going forward. We're seeing a lot of aggressive facial expressions. We're seeing anger, and like you guys were saying, disdain as well when it comes to the U.S. And he's using the most illustrators we've seen so far up to this point, or the largest ones we've seen so far. But he's really aggressive at this point.
Will you commit now not to send any further Russian troops into Ukrainian sovereign territory?
Look, did we say that we were planning to send our armed formations anywhere? We conducted war games in our territory. How can this not be clear? I'm saying it again because I want your audience to hear it. I want your listeners to hear it, both on the screens of their television sets and on the internet. We conducted military exercises in our territory. Imagine if we sent our troops into direct proximity to your borders. What would have been your response? We didn't do that. We did it in our territory. You conducted war games in Alaska. God bless you. But you had crossed an ocean, brought thousands of personnel and thousands of units of military equipment close to our borders, and yet you believe that we're acting aggressively, and somehow you're not. Just look at that. Pot calling the kettle black.
If you like this video, get the full body language breakdown and analysis on our main channel by clicking this video right here.